Hello everyone.
Hi.
Thanks for coming down. I'm really excited to be here. I think it's unheard of to have a magician on residency in an art gallery for a month. I think that's a first in the history of the world. So I hope you've had a chance to engage with Augusto's work on video. And as for me, I'm just going to do a card trick. Now this card trick, the Rhubaba gang have already seen it because I performed a version of it during the interview, which is in the booklet in the publication. So the card trick is in there. And there's another reason why it's an interesting card trick. If I can ask someone to shuffle the cards, could you just give the cards a bit of a shuffle any way you like, it's alright. This card trick helps to explain a little bit of history behind my name, Vincent Gambini. As some of you might have guessed, it's not my real name, it's a stage name. And it comes from another magician who was working in the 1940s and 50s across the United States. And this Vincent Gambini was not a very well-known magician. In fact, he wasn't very good. He was a bit clumsy with his hands, so not a kind of sleight of hand artist by any means. But according to one account, there is one trick he did which continues to baffle magicians to this day. And that's the trick that I'd like to show you this evening. It's called Vincent Gambini's famous four-ace trick. So I'm going to take the cards. The trick happens in a bar, and it might be good for the trick if you all take one step forward so you can see this area a little bit better. So Gambini is in a bar, and the first thing he does is he has different audience members shuffle the cards. So could you also give them a bit of a shuffle just to really make sure that they're mixed up. And so we're in the bar, people are drinking, like now. Cards are falling. And whilst the pack is being shuffled, Gambini actually leaves the room. He goes outside to sort of reinforce this sense that he has no control whatsoever over the cards and so on. And it's at this stage, very early on in the trick, that actually something starts going wrong. And I'll show you what I mean. So different audience members are, thank you, shuffling the cards and making sure that the cards are exactly what they appear to be. And what begins to happen is interesting. I'll give the cards a cut. An audience member, which I'll play for the time being, starts going through the cards to check that they really are just a mixed pack of cards. I'm not sure if you can all see, but I think you get a sense. It's a poker deck, 52 cards. And then, because Gambini is away, the spectator decides to make things a little bit more interesting or difficult for the magician. And so having mixed the cards up a little bit, he decides to do a very interesting shuffle to make it harder for Gambini to do his trick. And this is roughly what he does. I hope you can see well enough. He takes roughly half the cards face up and half the cards face down, and he begins to basically interweave the cards in this funny way. So you get a kind of face up and face down mix. I'll do it like this so you can see the cards are sort of interweaving all the way through. Gambini has no idea that this is going on. And then what happens next is the stuff of legend, well, for magicians. Gambini walks into the room and he sees what has happened. You know, that the cards are sort of facing, they're face up and face down. But he's unfazed by this. In fact, he's quite up for the challenge. And apparently, in the account of the trick anyway, this is what happens. He has a look at the pack. He notices all the cards are facing up and down. And he looks up at the audience. He looks down at the deck. And he looks up at the audience. And then he cuts the pack and he says, Ace of Hearts. ace of spades, ace of clubs, and finally 6 of spades. And he coughs in the script, in the account of the trick. It says that Gambini coughs at this point. And then he says 3 out of 4 isn't bad, but 4 out of 4 is so much better. Now, the question is, how did Gambini, who wasn't, remember, a skilled sleight of hand artist in any way, how did he do such a thing? Now, magicians have come to the conclusion, or to the explanation, which is rather simple, and if you think about it, it makes sense, that Gambini wasn't a skilled card handler. He couldn't do very much with a pack of cards in this situation, but his accomplice was. And so the person who mixed all the cards up and down, the spectator, was an expert in sleight of hand. And so they worked together. They went from bar to bar doing this trick. Yeah? And in fact, Gambini's accomplice was such a maestro that Gambini could end the trick by spreading the cards on the table very slowly and saying, "That, my friends, was Vincent Gambini's famous 4-ace trick." Now, the trick has a postscript, PS. Magicians, the magic community, has decided that that's the explanation for the trick, that he had an accomplice who must have done the sleight of hand for Gambini. There's no other explanation. But I've been doing some research. I've started my residency here at Rhubaba, and I think there's a very different explanation for the trick, which I'm going to test with you tonight. And that is, very simply, the trick didn't happen. There's an account of it, but it's a fiction. It's just a lie. And this is what I think happened. I think Gambini really did, he really was in a bar, and he did have the cards shuffled by audience members with him out of the room. And then I think someone genuinely, an audience member, just took the cards to spite Gambini and just shuffled them face up and face down. And then I think that Gambini came back into the room, saw that the cards were facing up and down, and just thought, fuck it, I mean, this is ridiculous. I can't do a trick with, I mean, what kind of behavior is that anyway? Someone comes and just messes, like, you wouldn't go up to a pianist and sort of break their keys and say, come on, play your concert. And so he just went home. And perhaps a few days later, he wrote an account of the trick. He wrote a story called Vincent Gambini's famous 4-ace trick. And in the story, he found a way of getting his own back. And so in the story, he wrote that Gambini came back in the room, found the 4 aces, and managed to somehow inexplicably reverse all the cards so that they were facing the same direction. But it's impossible. And that's how Vincent Gambini continues to fool magicians, by having described a trick which never took place. So that's it. I hope some of you can come along to the other events which are advertised on the wall and which Lara pointed out. Thank you very much.